Well, that was fun.
I enjoyed
That
it.
actually worked out pretty good. Yeah.
All right.
So what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing great, man. Had a great couple of days getting some pages, working on pages. Got some great feedback from you, Mark, and the whole Get Along gang and all that. So, grinding.
Grinding. Sorry, I'm
Grinding.
dropping some links here.
All right.
Grinding.
What about
Yeah,
yourself? How's your
sorry.
week, though?
Not too bad. Kind of tiring.
I don't
Working
want
a
to hear
lot.
about it,
Working
but okay.
hard. I appreciate that, man. I can always count on you. What's up, Leandro? How's it
Leandro,
going,
what's up,
brother?
brother?
Very
Yes.
excited.
All right.
Metal. Yeah, that was actually I'm not gonna say it. I'll say it later.
There's music?
What? The music?
There's,
Did you not hear the music?
No, it was on
Did
mute.
you not hear it?
No,
You were on mute.
I was on mute.
You were on mute. Yeah.
Uh,
It was mute. Yeah.
really? You learn something new every day.
I told you I was gonna do it, man. Haven't you seen it before? Apparently not. All right. Well, hey, everybody. We for some of the people out there that are joining us on YouTube, thank you so much for checking us out. Like always, this is actually the first time we are back on Facebook in months.
Since
And you,
the relaunch 2.
relaunch, yeah. And you might ask why that was.
Dan Fraga.
I'm gonna explain it here in a second. What's up, LA?
LA, what's up, brother?
So that's another thing too. Being back on Facebook, we got some people that we haven't talked to in a while get to see us. And here's the thing: under the advice of Dan Fraga, which is great advice, and we still are going to do this at some point. But he came on our show, and we had our show streamed all over the place. And he was talking about consolidating the show so that we could get more viewers into one spot, build a channel, build a following, try to get monetized, and all that kind of stuff. And it was great. We wanted to do it, so we dropped everything we did. We consolidated it down to one channel, and we started doing that for a little while. I think the problem is that we discovered is that we were just not ready to take that next big jump, And the whole purpose of bringing people onto the show, because we deal a lot with independent creators, guys that are just like us, if you want to call it amateur, whatever you want to call it, but just independent creators. And then we bring out some big names when we get a chance. But the idea is to get the most people to see people's projects when they come on their show. And we were getting a lot more eyes when we were doing both YouTube and Facebook. So we've decided to go back to Facebook now. We only have one YouTube channel, and that's one thing we're keeping. One YouTube channel, and I would direct everybody, if you're watching on Facebook, do us a favor. I dropped the link into the comments. Follow that link. If you like the show, subscribe. Like it.
Even if you
hit
don't
that
like
bell.
it.
Even if you don't like the show, just subscribe.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. If you watch us on Facebook, take the second. It's not that long. You might have to create a profile, but just go over and give us a subscribe. What's up, Chauncey?
What's up, Chauncey?
Yeah, man. But anyway, it's Friday night, man. I'm so excited. I'm always excited.
Studio, like the Phil Collins song.
I'm always excited to talk to my brother in arms, Sean here. He always gets me set for the weekend because, why not? This is like the party night, or at least it was when I was younger, quite a bit younger. Not so much anymore.
How sad is that? We are old and trash.
Don't remind me, man. Me and all my friends were just getting old, having kids, getting married. Not like back in the day. Back in the day. What's up, Rick? Hail.
Hell, Rick, how you doing, brother? Thanks for coming by again. Love you.
Well, no, Sean, you've got some things we want to do before we bring on our guests. I don't want to hold them up too long.
I
do want to jumping in here as much as we can, get some eyes on the show.
I'm going to do a quick unboxing from Mark Primetime Polton and Mike McMahon. I believe it's their U.S. Assassins Volume 2.
Mark, a.k.a. your best friend. Of the best friend show.
Well, we don't really do that anymore. I'm going to blame Phil on that.
Have you done that in a while? Oh. You got kicked off it? That's it?
Yeah,
I know. Go to war now.
Well, what are you going to do? But I got you, Joe.
That's right. You always got me, buddy.
All right. So here's up first the U.S. Assassin Volume 1 reprint by Mark Yoon. Shout out to Yoon. Your game is stepping up fast and good, and that's cool.
Very nice, very nice.
Volume 2, awesome cover. And I got a bunch of cards and artwork. I'll take that out in a moment. And then, because of the best friend card, the Kevin Mark threw in the Kevin Sharp variant cover. That's
Son of
a
bitch.
dope cover. Well, you know.
That's the book. That's the one I got. But yeah, it is a dope cover.
Yeah, and the Cedric Nakun.
Oh no shit. That's badass too.
Yeah. So I read the book. I worked on the book. I just came up. Well, I also worked on Volume 1, so that's cool. But I'm just gonna do this just to boost my own ego, because why not? It's my show, right?
Why not, right? That's
Yeah.
that's what it's all about, buddy.
That's what it's all about. Here we go. That's me.
There it is. Look
Pretty
at that.
cool. It was a lot of fun. Let me see the colorist name because I'm horrible with names. Oliver Lee Arce, Arc, ARCE. Talented guy. Dope stuff. You know, if you guys haven't pledged, well, you hit them up. I'm sure they got more books in demand and all that. But thank you, brother Mark, for the extra books. And Mike, you are kicking ass, making us all look like chumps.
Yeah, Mike, that stuff's looking good. And Sean, your pinup look awesome too. Rick, have not
like
heard yet. Yeah, I mean, I'll spread that rumor. It's the best picture in the entire book. But yeah, not yet, Rick. We're still waiting to hear. But
Rick, thank you again for everything you're doing and pushing us, you know, to get to other platforms. It means a lot to us.
No, I'll just do a real quick shout out here. I got this today from the Maharat Michaels from Counterpoint Entertainment. Naughty and Nice, by art by Jacob Bear, I believe.
All right, cool. We'll have Jacob on the second week, I believe.
Yep.
Of February.
Fantastic. And since we're going to plug real quick before we get our guests on, I picked up this. I recommend everybody get it. It's the Chris Claremont anniversary issue. And really, I only bought this for one reason, and that's because an 8-page story by a friend of the show, Brett Booth, and Adelsa Corona, and they kicked some serious ass. It was awesome to see Brett on a Marvel property again, and I'm looking forward to his X-Men run coming up. So, with that being said, I'm going to throw the show to Sean.
Thank you.
I'm going to have him hype this shit up, and we're going to get rolling like we always do. Actually, before we do, crap. Almost did it again, man. 2 shows in. I knew we were going to fuck it up. And okay, here we go. Welcome to the
Art and Stuff Show. I'm Sean Ahrendt, and I hate funny fighters, but with me, as always, is my brother in art.
I'm the very talented, the very sexy, the very distinguished, always narcissistic, but never vain, a staunch defender of Rob Liefeld, and a lover of all things 90s. Joseph Michael Sonntag, or Jerome Sonntag if you prefer, or as the Pope likes to call me, JMS. Welcome to the show, and what a show it is, as always. So now I'm going to throw it to my boy, Sean.
Yeah, always, brother. Anything for you. Thank you for always the opportunities.
So
we have coming in, promoting his, we're going to promote his Indiegogo for First Man. He's worked for Marvel, DC, Acclaim, Omnius Press, Cross-Gen. Dropping the ball. He's a teacher, and he's a teacher, and one of the greatest how-to books ever created. And I think it's a lot better than How-To Marvel, but shush. Mr. Andy Smith.
How's it going, Andy? Welcome to the show.
Hello. Hey, guys. What's happening?
It's another good night, man. We're really excited to talk to you and dive into all of it.
I appreciate it.
I'm hoping Sean's intro was good enough there. Usually he reads something. He tried to do it by memory. You did all right, man. You did all right.
I thought that was fine.
Yeah.
Great.
I
thought it was fine.
Nice. Awesome.
I would say we all own that book, man. Leandro, absolutely. That was a book I got when I was younger.
So I like it.
That's what I was saying before you came. Well, before we went live, when we were talking backstage a little bit. You know, I mean, you influenced like a generation of artists learning, wanting to learn how to draw and everything. I mean, because I know it as a kid, I was always looking at any kind of how-to book, when
Sure.
it came to it. And your book, specifically, How to Draw the Marvel Way was another big book that I was looking at as a kid. And all those things that you would learn in those books are definitely stuff that would help propel me into the future. So I hope that you definitely understand like how much you have influenced so many people. There's so many men and women, boys and girls, whatever, it doesn't matter, just over the years to draw.
Yes. I mean, you guys know how it is. You work in a room by yourself all day, so you don't really think about it. I think one of the things about missing conventions this past year is the fact that that's the time that you do get out and you do hear from people and stuff. And since, basically haven't done a con in actually about a year, the last con I did was in February of last year in Texas. So coming up on a year.
Yeah.
And, you just don't, it helps, as you know, to get out and see fans, at least for me, and talk to them and communicate and realize, oh yeah, people do see the stuff that I do. So it'll be nice when I get back to a con. So
well, let's hope we get back to being able to do that stuff. I can't wait. Get back to life a little bit normal, go see people again. It sucks because when all that stuff went down, I was just getting ready to start going to cons as a guest, to show my work, to promote my books. Sean and I have always tried to have plans where we're going to get together. I haven't seen Sean in person since 2007. Yeah, it's been forever. So we wanted to get together and go to some cons together, and
we reconnected on Grindr, so it's been great.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it's there for.
Hey, JoJo, good to see you. Like I said, some people we haven't seen you in a little while because now we're back on Facebook for a little bit, anyway. So it's good to see a lot of old faces that didn't follow us over to YouTube. So
yeah, thanks.
Follow us over. I'm just kidding.
But Andy, would you mind giving us your origin story? How you got into being a geek? What inspired you to draw? What was your first comic and all that? Like, tell us, school us, essentially.
Well, drawing wise, like every kid, I drew, but unlike I think most kids, my daughter included, every kid draws when they're 2 or 3, but I just kept going. And, like I said, my daughter drew when she was like that age, and then she just stopped and she got other interests and stuff. But for myself, I just loved doing it. It was something innate that I had to do. And I remember in elementary school, I started off not with superheroes and comics and stuff, but I started drawing cars because I was a big car guy. I collected Matchbox cars and stuff like that, So I did that. And then I remember coming home from school one day and stopping in a 7-Eleven, convenience store, and picking up an issue of Captain America just because the cover just like really popped out to me. And it was issue 275. I was
just about to ask him. Yep, nice.
Oh yeah, it's 275. It's on my spin rack. And it was a great cover. That run was drawn by Mike Zeck. I think DeMatteis was the writer. Mike Zeck penciled it. John Beatty inked it. And the cover, he was just coming right at you, and I picked it up, and I just love the art. And as an artist, that's why I buy most things, is because of the art. And then to me, story secondary, unless it's obviously a well-known writer, then I'll pick.
I'm the same way. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't pick things up. I don't really follow writers much. More, artists. So anyhow, so I bought that and I just switched over and started to try to draw basically superheroes and stuff. And in the books at that time, and that's when I started collecting comics, was that point forward. In fact, I subscribed to Captain America and I'd get it in the mail in that little brown paper sleeve, which I just love those things. I wish I would have kept some of them, the sleeves.
Right.
And I remember seeing an ad in a book, in one comic, I don't know if it was Marvel or DC, for the Joe Kubert School. And I was like, holy shit, there's a school that teaches you how to do this? So I showed my parents, and this was like freshman in high school or maybe 8th grade even, and said, this is where I want to go. And I was just solely focused on going to that school. And, you know, my parents were like, okay, you know, they always really were behind me with what I wanted to do. And even in a spare bedroom in the house I grew up in, they bought me a drawing table. And I remember, you know, friends would come over and be like, oh, that's not yours. That's got to be your dad's. There's no way they'd buy you a drawing table. Because it's literally the old wooden type table you saw Jack Kirby have.
Nice.
That's the type in the 80s. And the funny thing is that's the type I have now as well, as the wooden one like that.
Me too.
So my parents said, okay, if that's where you want to go. My parents' philosophy with my brother and I both was, you know, we'll do our best to pay for you to go to school once. So what they meant is, if for some reason a year in, and the Kubert School's 3 years. So for some reason a year in, or even 3 years later, I was like, nah, that wasn't really for me. I want to go someplace else. It was like, well, you had your one shot. You can pay for that now by yourself.
All right.
You know?
Smart.
So I started in the fall of 1988 at the Kubert School. I took a year off after high school. I actually was accepted for 87, the fall of 87, but I just thought, I'll take a year off. I'm in no rush. So I took a year off and just worked in town and stuff where I grew up. Actually, I was a map maker, a cartographer for that year. And this was back before the computer, so it was all done by hand and stuff. So the funny thing about that was you had to have really good hand-eye coordination for cutting this film that they would use to make the maps and stuff. And I was already practicing inking with a brush before I even went to the Kubert School. So I went into this place and took like a test, and they were really impressed with the hand-eye coordination I had to be able to do it. Because the basic gist is the line was like a fat pencil line, so less than a 1/16 of an inch thick. But with the X-Acto knife, you really had to be like right in the middle of that line when you were cutting. And you were working on a big light table, and you were cutting this stuff called ruby lith, which is this red film. And after you would cut out a certain section, you pull up the rest you don't need. So anyhow, I did that for a year, went to the Kubert School in 88, and worked my ass off. And then fast forward to the fall of 1990, when I was going into my senior year. I showed up, for the first day of school in September of 1990, and I get my class list. And for anybody who doesn't know, the Kubert School, it's kind of set up like a high school in regards to, unlike colleges where you might have, a class on Monday and 2 classes Tuesday, nothing on Wednesday, something on Thursday, and the hours fluctuate and stuff. The Kubert School is like basically 8 to 3 with an hour for lunch. And you have 1 class in the morning, hour for lunch, 1 class in the afternoon. So you have 10 classes a week.
Gotcha.
So, I got there in 1990 in the fall for my senior year, and I'm looking at my class schedule and everything's cool. And then I find it's a small school, and I find out that Bart Sears is teaching there, but he's only teaching 2nd year students, not 3rd year, which I am. And I was like, well, screw that. I want to meet this guy because I've been buying Justice League Europe. I love the guy's artwork.
Cops.
I bought Cops. I got the issue of the Spectre that he did. He did 1 issue of the Spectre. And then, I started getting Justice League Europe. And I think when he was teaching at the school, he was working on somewhere in the teens, like around 16 or 17 of Justice League Europe. So I was like, I'm going here. I'm going to meet this guy and show him my stuff. So I just, walked into class before class started in the morning one day and, said, "Hey, Mr. Sears, can I show you my art?" And he's like, "Sure." So I showed it to him, and he must have saw something in it because he basically took me under his wing and would mentor me after school and stuff. I'd go to his apartment and work on homework while he was working on Justice League Europe.
That's awesome.
So it was cool. I got to see somebody in the business, and every teacher at the Kubert School is a professional, unlike a lot of colleges where their sole job is just to teach. The Kubert School is set up where all the teachers are actually working professionals because they basically teach there part-time.
Right.
And
Yeah.
So I mean, and it wasn't all comics. So I mean, yeah, there were other comic artists that taught at the school, but for my fandom and what I wanted to do, Bart was like, "Oh my God, this guy's teaching here." So anyhow, he would put tracing paper over my assignments and be like, fix this, do this, whatever. And then, like I said, I'd watch him draw Justice League Europe, and then it got to a point where, and I didn't do a ton, but he was like, "Hey, you want to draw some buildings in the background of this page?" And I was like, "Sure."
Yeah, right.
So, even though it's just buildings, I'm like, "Sure, I'll draw some buildings in Justice League Europe." So he laid out the way he wanted the perspective to go and gave me a few other issues to look at how he drew buildings so I could match it. And so I drew some buildings and stuff. And in March of 1991, he was taking pages up to DC to drop off. And he asked if I wanted to go with him and take some work, and he introduced me to some editors. So, of course, I was like, yeah. Because the Kubert School is only about 45 minutes from New York.
Yeah, that's my area
So,
where I'm from.
Yeah, so we drove in to the city and went to DC, and he introduced me to his editor, and I showed him some work, and then he introduced me to a couple others, and he'd leave the room. He wasn't like, "Hey, this is so-and-so, look at his stuff," and just standing there. There was no, he wasn't like, "Give this kid a job." He's like, "Just look at his stuff, tell him what you think." And the first time up, I saw 3 or 4 editors, and they gave me notes and, critiques and, work on whatever. I don't remember.
Right.
But they basically, at the end, they all said, work up some new samples because we like what we see and come back in a couple weeks. So I was like, okay. So after that, Bart and I left. We went and, got some dinner and a beer or something. And then I worked up new samples. And a couple weeks later, Bart was going back up and asked if I wanted to tag along. I said, hell yeah. So I went with him with my new samples. And, saw some of the same editors, met some new ones, but the editors I saw a couple weeks earlier were impressed because they're like, "Oh, you actually came back, and you came back timely." Because we said, work up some new stuff, come back in a couple weeks. So I don't know if that was like a test or not, but, I'm a pretty literal guy. So if somebody's like, "Come back in a couple weeks," my mind goes, okay. So, I met, like I said, I saw some of those editors, and a couple of them were like, "Look, you took the notes. The stuff looks great. I just don't have anything." But one editor had an inventory job, and an inventory job, they don't do them anymore. But what an inventory job was back then was a job that they would have completely finished. So penciled, inked, lettered, colored, ready to go to the printer, but they would just have it in the drawer. And then basically, if a book was running late, instead of shipping late, because back then they were really a lot more concerned with meeting, if a book's supposed to come out, it needs to come out. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, "Oh, it's going to be a couple weeks late," or whatever. So an inventory job was just that. If a book looked like it was running late, they could just pull open a flat file, pull out the job, send it to the printer, and it would just be an out of continuity one-off story. So it was the editor gave me an issue of Suicide Squad to do as an inventory. They said this was in March, and I told the editor straight up. I said, "I really am glad to do this. I want to do this, but I still got I don't graduate until May, so it's going to be kind of tough because I got to do the schoolwork." And he goes, "Nope," because they knew obviously I was going to the Kubert School, and he was like, "Nope, I totally get it. school comes first. This is an inventory job, so there's no deadline on it. So how about I just hold the script until you graduate, and then you can start it. I was like, okay. So, I mean, I think I did get the script before I graduated just so I could have it to read over, but I didn't start drawing it until I graduated. I moved back home, and about a week after I moved back home, because I was from Maryland, or I grew up in Maryland. So I moved back home and moved back in with my parents and started working on it, and got it done, and went up to DC again since I live, Maryland's not that far,
Right.
and moved to work around to other editors to try and get more work, because the rule of thumb is getting your first job is easy, getting your second job is harder because it's a test. They want to see, and that's the thing. The editor told me, because there's no deadline. Take your time, do your best work, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I could have turned it in 4 months later, but I guarantee I wouldn't be getting another job.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the business has changed since then too. I mean, if there was a case like that now, I could probably take 8 weeks on it, and as long as I was showing work, not just dropping off the radar for like 3 weeks ago. Hey, here I am with some pages. I could probably get away with it. But back then, in the Kubert school, we were basically taught, you should be able to pencil a page a day. You should be able to do 5 a week, whether it takes you 7 days to do it, or 5 days, or 3 days, whatever. That's what you should be able to do. And the other thing that Joe taught too, because I had Joe for 2 years at the school. The other thing Joe taught too is you don't want to, he taught overall, he taught honesty, which is if the editor looks at your sample pages and says, or asks, how long did it take you? And if it took you 2 days to draw one page, don't lie and say 1 day.
Right.
Because they're going to give you a deadline, and you got to meet the deadline. That's the most important thing. So I pretty much always went into it with the mindset, even when I did sample pages, of not spending more than 10 or 12 hours on a page, because that's a long day. So, because the editor did ask, how long does it take you to draw a page? And I'd say a day. They're like, okay. So I think I did the inventory job. I think it took me like 4 weeks, 4.5 weeks maybe. So basically a month. It was a 22-page job. Mm-hmm. 22 pages is basically 4 weeks, And I took it up and showed it around and got another job and so on and so forth. So that's pretty much how it started. But the inventory job was never printed, which was fine with me. So, suicide, it's like I was saying, an inventory job only gets printed if they need it, and they didn't need it. Like Suicide Squad got canceled within a year.
Oh, okay.
And it was probably like 11 years later, a FedEx box showed up. And I was like, what the hell is this? It was from DC. And I wasn't expecting anything. So I'm like, what's this? And I opened it up, and there it was. It was all my artwork to that Suicide Squad job I did 11 years prior.
Was it inked or just straight pencil?
Files. It was just penciled. They never even got it inked. But it did have, so back then, you would actually obviously send your FedEx your pages up or hand deliver, depending on where you lived. So you'd FedEx them up, and then the editor would take blue pencil and circle on the pages where he wanted the word balloons to go. And then he'd send the pages to the letterer, and then the letterer would obviously letter them on the boards and then send them back to the editor. The editor would proofread it, send it to the inker, so on and so forth. But it never got past the stage of the blue line, the editor circling where the balloon should go, the balloon placement.
Gotcha.
Basically. So I got all 22 pages back in a nice FedEx box, and I literally, this was like 2001, 2002. I opened it up, I looked at them, I was like, closed it up, sealed it with packing tape, and it's been in my closet ever since.
That's cool.
I have not opened that box in 19 years.
Wow.
That's crazy. That's
and
awesome.
Until something happens, I never will.
Right?
My kid can open it. So
no, that's really cool. That's really, I always find it really, really fascinating when we talk to people that broke into a time in comics where that was kind of the way you did it. You took samples in, maybe you got some oddball jobs, backup stories, like you said, inventory stories or whatever, and you just worked your way up. You know, like I'm so envious because I wish that was still kind of the way it was. You know.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, my second job was for a book called Justice League Quarterly, which, like the title, it came out quarterly, so every 3 months, and that was an anthology book. And I did a Global Guardian story that was like 7 or 8 pages. And the first one I just did pencils on, and then I did issues 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I think I did 5 issues. So they came out quarterly, so a year and a month, or a year and whatever, 3 months.
Right.
And after the first issue, since it was only 7 pages, I didn't ink it. But then on the second installment, I asked my editor, I said, look, it's only 7 pages. Can I just ink it myself? And he was like, yeah, go ahead. So I think I inked the rest of those. And then the big one, which was very intimidating, was I did the first Green Lantern annual. And when I say the first Green Lantern annual, I'm not talking like in the 90s. I'm talking ever. And I didn't even realize that at the time. It was literally up until this point. Green Lantern came out in 1959 or some shit?
Right.
Up to this point, there was never a Green Lantern annual. So it was literally the first Green Lantern annual, and it was during the whole Eclipso shit they were doing at DC.
Oh,
So
right.
it crossed over into all the annuals that year. And but it was intimidating because this was not chronologically of how the books came out, but how I was offered the stuff. This was my third job. And my third job was a 56-page book. So it was basically almost 3 issues. And I remember talking to Andy Kubert, because I met him and his brother when I was going to the Kubert school.
Right.
And I remember calling him up and going, man, I've just got like this stage fright. It's 56 pages. I mean, I'm just like, oh. I mean, the script was really thick, obviously.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't look at it as obviously you need to read the whole thing before you start drawing, which, I mean, from day one, I would read the script a couple times before I put pencil to paper, and still do. But he goes, after you do that, he goes, just look at it as 1 page at a time. 1 page, because if you look at it as 56, it's crushing. Now it's not now. Somebody was like, "Oh, do a 56-page." I'd be like, "Okay." Yeah, because now I would just map it out in my brain like, oh, 56 pages. If I pencil and ink, I didn't ink that book. Somebody else, my buddy John Beatty did. But now I would look at it and I just go, oh, 56 pages. If I'm penciling and inking it, that's 3 to 4 pages a week. For me doing pencils and inks, I can do 3 to 4 a week. So I would just do the math and go, oh, okay. I'm good. But back then, being my third job, I was just like, holy shit.
Oh, I bet, man.
I drew the ring on the wrong finger for like half the book, and the editor didn't even.
Oh, really?
Because I just assumed remember, this is pre-internet, so it wasn't like when they sent you reference, they would either fax it to you. Or they would just make photocopies of stuff and throw it in the FedEx box with the script. So I don't even know if they sent me reference for Green Lantern because it was Hal Jordan. I mean, it's Green Lantern. But for some reason, I just assumed his ring was on his ring finger, but it's not. It's on his middle finger. So for half the book, I drew it on his ring finger, and the editor didn't catch it until I was halfway done. So I'm 23 or 20, well, it's 56-page book, so whatever, 23, 24 pages in, and he's like, oh my God, dude, I just noticed you've been drawing the ring on the wrong finger. I need you to fix this stuff. The good part was John Beatty, the guy that was inking it, we lived in town together, because at this point I was living in Orlando, and I met him at a convention. And so I could just go over to his place and redraw stuff, and he could white out if he inked it and whatever. So it wasn't a huge thing, but still, it was like, thanks. So, yeah.
This is
And then
before
from there, I went
Photoshop,
to
kids.
Marvel.
Yeah, way before Photoshop.
Yeah,
Old
before
school pixel.
Photoshop, way before. So, yeah, I mean, everything I did back then was printed on newsprint. It was mostly flat color. It's all lettered on the boards. So, yeah, it was good times. And then from there, I went to Marvel. Like a year later, I got my gig over there.
Who noticed you at Marvel? Like, did they see your work and say, "Hey, we got a perfect project for you. We want to bring you in," or did you show samples?
I was so at this point, like I said, I was living in Orlando, and at this point, I was sharing a studio. John Beatty and I said, you know what? Because we only live like 5 minutes away. We threw the idea around and we said, why don't we just go rent office space and share a studio? So we rented an office that was like, I don't know, 12 by 12, a 12 by 12 room.
Right,
We
yeah.
just put our 2 desks in there. And then another friend of ours, inker by the name of Jim Sanders, he also lived in Orlando and he was working for Marvel at the time. He got into business a few years before I did. So he came into the studio and I think I might have asked Jim if he would show some of my work to his editors at Marvel. And he was like, yeah, sure. So he called up this one editor he was working with named Mike Rockowitz and said, hey, I'm sharing a studio with this guy. He does work for DC. His name's Andy Smith. And Mike asked me, he goes, well, what's his, the name doesn't ring a bell, which makes total sense. I was only in the business for like 7-8 months, I think, at the time.
Oh, wow.
And and Jim said, hey, he tutored under Bart Sears, so his work has a little bit of a Bart Sears vibe. And Mike was like, oh yeah, I'd love to see that. So I faxed some stuff up to Mike that I was doing for DC, and Mike was like, yeah, stuff looks good. So my first job for Marvel, just like DC, never saw a print. I did a Doctor Strange annual for Marvel that Alfredo Acala inked. So if you know who Alfredo Acala is, he's a really heavy-handed inker, but he does great work. So when it was done, it didn't look like I drew it anyhow, which I didn't mind because the stuff, I still have some of the pages. The stuff, Alfredo Acala. Now, it wasn't peak Alfredo. This was towards the end of his career, but still, it was Alfredo Acala. So, but once again, for some reason, I don't know if Doctor Strange got canceled or if they just changed their mind because it was an annual. I have no idea, but it never saw print. So then from there, the editor offered me Quasar as a monthly book, and I was like, sure, because that's steady work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was getting steady work, but I was just, like I said, I had the Justice League Quarterly thing, which was okay. I had the Green Lantern Annual because I was working on that and the Justice League stuff at the same time. But, and then the Doctor Strange Annual, and then, Quasar monthly book. And I'm like, at this point, obviously, I'm living on my own and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. So I did Quasar for like 10 months, I think, 10 issues, I think. And I went and actually this was an event thing they were doing called Star Blasters, which was Quasar, Silver Surfer, somebody else. It was a cosmic thing. I can't remember who the other character was. I want to say Terrax, but that doesn't make sense because he's a villain. And it was 3 here. I can't remember what it was, but they had me do. I felt really bad about this. They had me do because I said I would do it. It was going to be a mini series, and it was. It was a step up from Quasar. It was like, well, we'd like to pull you off Quasar to have you do this mini series. Star Blasters, Quasar's in it, Silver Surfer's in it, somebody else I don't remember's in it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And it was going to have a lot of the Marvel people in it, characters and stuff. So they're like, we need a promo piece of, just a cool shot of all these characters and stuff, Quasar front and center. I remember the Thing was on it, Surfer, Invisible Woman, Fantastic Four, some Avengers character, whatever. Right. So I drew this group shot, and they got it inked up and got it colored. And I got offered. I got offered
character
a
was Beta
gig.
Ray Bill.
Oh yeah, that's it. It was Beta Ray Bill. That's right.
There you go, Harrenberg.
My man.
There you go.
There you
Thank
go.
you. So then Eric Larson, I don't know how I started talking to Eric, but before internet, and I got Eric's phone number and I called him up and we were chatting and I introduced myself to him. It's not like I knew him. And he asked me if I wanted to do a issue of Vanguard for him for his studio at Image.
Yep.
And Vanguard was a 6-issue miniseries that Joe Mad did an issue, Rick Leonardi did an issue, Scott Eaton did an issue, I did an issue, and then I think Tom Coker did an issue. So I was like, yeah. And then he asked me if I wanted to do a Deadly Duo miniseries. And I was like, oh, I got to make a decision. So I quit the Star Blast thing after doing the pinup. And I remember the editor was not happy.
Yeah.
I totally get, I mean, it was kind of a dick move. But, Image was, this was right after Deadly Duo was this. I think Super Patriot came out, then Vanguard, then Deadly Duo. And, I was just thinking, wow, it's Image. I mean, he's giving me a better rate than I was making at Marvel. I mean, it wasn't huge, but it was a bump up for Marvel. And I was thinking, royalties, whatever. So I did it, and it was fun. It was a fun gig to do, and I liked working with Eric. And then the funny thing is, the guy that did Star Blast was Scott Eaton, who I would actually meet 8 years later, or no, 7 years later. I'd meet Scott at CrossGen when we worked together there. So, nice. And then you just realize, oh my God, you're the guy that took over Star Blast when I quit. And then, I went back to Marvel, and Bart and I did Ominous Press for the first time in the early 90s after Deadly Duo. Yep, we did that. That was the first Ominous Press.
There you go.
Did you get those from Second and Charles? Those look like Second and Charles tags. Or is that just a store?
No, my comic shop. I just had to re-get them after years of losing a collection. But yeah, so I'm like, I need these back in my life. Was there a videotape that you guys did for promotion for that, or am I thinking of something else?
For Ominous? No, I don't think so.
Or am I thinking that this thing was just so thick at the time and I was a kid that I thought it was a...
Yeah.
All right,
no,
good.
well, the funny thing is, so, God, I did this to Eric, too. So after Deadly Duo, I basically talked Eric into doing a second miniseries of Deadly Duo, if I remember correctly.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Except then Bart calls me up from Star Masters. That was it. Yeah, Star Masters. See, old memory. So I was living
he knows.
I was living in Florida doing Deadly Duo. Talked him into because after Deadly Duo, the first series was only 3 issues. After that, I was like, shit, I'm out of work again. So I believe I talked him into doing a second miniseries. And Bart called me up and he's like, hey, and I'm in Orlando, he's in Syracuse, and he's like, hey, I'm looking to start my own company. It's called Ominous Press, and I'd like you to be my art director and ink the stuff over me. And then after the first couple issues of inking, you'll get your own book to draw, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds great. Do I have to move to Syracuse, New York? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, oh, I live in Orlando. I said, dude, I live where people go to vacation.
Yeah.
I never lived there because I grew up in Maryland. I moved to Orlando in '91 in the fall. Not even the fall, like 3 weeks after I graduated the Kubert School, I started on this issue of Suicide Squad, picked up and moved to Orlando because a friend of mine lived there. Got a small 1-bedroom apartment for like $400 a month. And then 2 years later, Bart's like, yeah, I want you to move up to shitty Syracuse. No, lives in Syracuse.
No, it's trash. It's cold.
It's gray. It is so gray. So I was like, yeah, okay. So, and he paid for my moving expenses. It's not like I had a lot.
There you go.
All right.
so I moved up there, but then I had to tell Eric I couldn't do Deadly Duo, the second miniseries.
That you talked him into doing.
And I'm pretty sure I did. Like I said, my memory is not as great as it used to, but I'm pretty sure I did talk him into doing it, because I'm pretty sure on the phone Eric was like, dude, you're the one that wanted to do this. And I think he even solicited it. So I was like, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no.
So then he hired an artist named John Cleary, who and John drew a lot like Todd McFarlane. So John did it, and I thought it looked great. I bought it. I thought it was a fun looking book. I actually thought it was almost a better fit than what I did, just because of the story and stuff. So that's fine. Eric and I are still friends, so it was no big deal. In fact, I worked for Eric again in the later 90s doing Mars Attacks the Image Universe.
Yeah.
Series. So it's all good. It all worked out. Yeah, and Bart and I did Omnus for like a year and a half, and then the comic industry took a dump, so we had to basically close it up and whatnot. And that's when we went to Acclaim and did XO, rotating back and forth every couple issues.
Beautiful stuff.
Yeah, did that for like a year. And I mean, the good thing about Syracuse, it was fun sharing a studio, because Bart's desk was right next to mine, so we worked next to each other and stuff for a few years, and that was cool. And I met my wife up there, and then we moved back to Florida.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
And did that for a couple years, and then went to Tampa for CrossGen in 2000. And Bart moved. Bart got a job at CrossGen. We kind of, and please jump in with any questions. I don't want to feel like I'm just doing all the talking.
No, this is phenomenal.
We'll have some questions after, but yeah, we're just listening. Like we get lost.
I just don't want to. So I moved back to Orlando in 97 with my wife, or 96 with my wife, and just was working for Marvel and working for DC. It's kind of a fog of what I was doing. And then, I remember being on Orlando at MegaCon, and this dude's talking about starting up a comic company in Tampa, and we were all sitting around. It was like 6 or 7 of us sitting around while Mark Alessi was giving the spiel, blah, blah, blah. And, I remember telling my wife about it, and we were in Orlando, and, she had a full-time job. And I don't know, we just weren't like, yeah, let's do, we just weren't really looking to move and stuff. And it's this new thing. And I was like, well, I do have work, so it's not like I need work. And if this thing fails, then I'm really SOL.
Right.
But then my buddy Ron Mars got a gig there as a writer, which I was really surprised he would, because he lived in Woodstock, New York. I mean, that's like where he was born and raised. He loved it there. And, Ron's another guy that I've known Bart for 30 years. I've known Ron for probably 28 or 29 years now. So I was really amazed that Ron was moving from, Woodstock to Florida, but he did. So we kind of all talked, Ron, Bart, and I, and kind of, Ron kind of had this plan of going, let me see if I can get you down here, talking about Bart. He goes, if I can get him down here, we can get you in, even though you're penciling now, and that's what you do and what you want to do. We could probably get you in to ink Bart, and then do that for like a year, and then, you'll pencil. And I was like, as long as I pencil, that's fine. Because I didn't get into the business to be an inker. I, wanted to pencil. And that's pretty much what I've done. I tell people for the past 30 years, I've probably inked maybe 10% of my career, and the rest is penciling. I've inked, I can count the number of guys I've inked on like one hand, maybe 2. So I've inked a lot of guys. So that worked. Ron got Bart a job at CrossGen, and then they got me an interview, which wasn't really much of a deal since I was already, known and stuff. So I came in to ink Bart. We worked together on the first for about 10 or 12 issues, so like a year. And then that's when I transitioned over and did some penciling, as I was like the in-house fill-in guy. So I drew an issue of Sigil, an issue of Meridian, issue of Negation, and then I took over the first for the rest of the time I was at CrossGen. And then in 03, the ship started sinking there, and people were just jumping off. And I know guys that stayed till the very end, like the very end, when it was like, okay, that's it, lights out. And I just didn't want to do that. So I left and went back and did some work for DC and some work for Marvel, and just, kind of just did the freelance thing again. So
it's like a phenomenal career. Excuse my cursing.
Say,
that's awesome.
I've done stuff outside of comics as well. I've done advertising type stuff and stuff like that as well. So it's not all been comics. It's all
NFL as well, right?
Huh?
The NFL. Did you do work for
the
NFL?
I did in 2017 on a weekly basis. I drew a different player for the NFLPA, because they do a certain award at the end of the year, and every week a different player got nominated. So I would draw whatever player was nominated that week, and it was a hell of a turnaround, because I think they would have like a list of 4 players on a Monday. They would pick the player on a Tuesday. They would tell me on Wednesday. I'd have to turn the sketch around on Thursday, and then the inks on Friday, and then the finished color over the weekend, so they could put the player up on Monday. And that was for 17 weeks, a new player every week. And then after that, the company I was doing it for worked with the NFLPA, and then the company I was working for after that got a deal with the Bears to do the Monsters of the Midway. And I mean, truth be told, the owner of the company that got the deal with the Bears is Israel Donajee, who used to play for the Bears. So I mean, he kind of had an in.
A huge Bears fan. I loved Israel Donajee. It was a great player.
So it's Israel's company, Athletic Comics, because he's a big comic book nerd.
I've seen that, and I never knew that was you. Like, I mean, I would. That's cool. Like, that just blew my mind. That's awesome. That's so cool.
Hey Joe, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
In 2018, that was the whole campaign for the Bears was Monsters of the Midway. So it was on their phone app. It was on billboards, I guess, on bus things in Chicago. It was on every program you got when you went to the game featured my art. The 11x17, so the program, you had to buy, but the 11x17, they gave out like an 11x17 two-sided poster. On the one side was my art, on the back side was like player stats and shit. They put it on plastic cups at the game and T-shirts and stuff. And then in 2019 season, they did it again, just a smaller scale, because they had it. That year was all about the NFL turning 100 and the Bears were turning 99, so they just wrapped it whole 100 in. But they still wanted to do some Monsters of the Midway stuff. And then even this year, 2020, or last year, 2020, we did some. They really scaled it back to just players. So I think I did like 5 or 6 of the, a couple of the guys that they picked up from other teams, and I think I did like 3 rookies this year.
That's so cool. Like I never
kind of scaled back.
Do they send you that stuff, or is it just it's just a gig, like a mug, or
Nope.
No, just a gig.
They sent me. So this was funny, and the company I did this for, because like I said, I didn't work directly with the Bears. I mean, the coolest thing was they did fly me up, and they also did for the 2018 campaign. They had some storyboards done by a friend of mine that I recommended, and then they had some animation done that was just shown in the stadium by an animation team in LA. So they actually flew us all in for a Sunday night NBC game and put us up in a box to watch the game and stuff. And, you know, Izzy was there, of course. Israel. We call him Izzy.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So Izzy was there in the box.
If you're a Bears fan, yeah, everyone called him Izzy. Yep, I knew.
But I mean,
Yep.
I met Izzy I think I met him 4 or 5 years before this gig. So I knew him before this gig. But when it comes to the cups now, in fact, I remember when I was up there for the game, you know, I got a program book. So no, I didn't have to pay for a program book or the poster, but I got a couple of those. But then I also got, I did go down to the pro shop and buy myself a t-shirt. And then I bought a couple more t-shirts online that weren't in the pro shop that used my art. And then a friend of mine, her and her husband, this is funny, a girl that used to work at CrossGen was from the Chicago area. So after CrossGen went down, she moved back to that area, ended up, you know, getting married, whatever. Fast forward, her and her husband have season tickets to Bears games. So she's like, you know, if you want, I can try and get some of the plastic cups at the game. And I said, if you could get me some of them, because they made 3 of them. I said, if you could get me some plastic cups, I will pay you. Because when they flew me for the game, I bought one. I mean, you know those games. It cost me, that cup full of beer was like $20.
Yeah, it's
So I bought one cup for myself. So she goes, I got a box coming to you. And I'm like, all right, let me know what I owe you. She goes, don't worry about it. I said, I got to pay for the postage. She goes, don't worry about it. So this box shows up and there's like 15 cups in there. And I said,
oh, nice.
No. I said, you didn't have to buy 15 cups. I know how much they are. She goes, we didn't. You wouldn't believe how many of these things were left behind. We picked up as many as we could. And I just took them home and put them in the dishwasher.
There you go.
Oh, it was cooler. She said I robbed a bunch of people outside.
Man, I would have kept that cup if I bought that. I would not have left that behind.
She kept some, but yeah. So I got a box of cups and stuff.
That's cool.
And I mean, I do have a couple posters because they made some posters and stuff, and they gave me some of the posters. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have to pay for those, so I have some posters and stuff like that. So, and I have a box. If you're a Bears fan, I'll send you 10 to 15 of them if you want.
Yeah.
The Chicago Bears on their own they're not thick, you know, they're, I don't know, 25 pages, coloring books.
Oh, nice.
The players' art that I did. And so the cover is full color, but then inside, you know, newsprint, it's a coloring book, right?
Right.
And they also made calendars as well, but I only have 2 calendars. But they sent me a case of coloring books, which I don't need 250 coloring books. But that's why I said, if you want some coloring books, I'll send them to you.
I'll tell you what, after we end the show and we're backstage, I'll definitely talk to you about that because I would definitely be interested for sure. That would be awesome.
Here's the funny thing. So they sent me the coloring books, and I'm looking at them, and I see a glaring mistake. So I call up one of the people, like the project manager for Izzy's company, and I go, Did you know they were doing coloring books? And she goes, no, we had no idea. And she didn't know. I mean, she was kind of apologetic because she's like, no, we had no idea. You know, we definitely would have let you know. And I said, no, it's not a big deal. The only reason I was asking if you knew is because they printed from the pencils, not from the books. And see, my pencils are tight. So when you see them, they're tight. But the problem is, wherever there's a big black area, I put an X.
Oh, nice.
There's these characters, there's these football players all throughout the coloring book, and they're different poses, and part of their bodies have X's instead of being filled in black. And that's why I called her. I said, look, I wasn't calling you to be like, what the heck? I said, I was calling you because I wanted to know how they got the wrong files. And she goes, no, that's just it. We didn't know they were doing them. If we did, we would have sent them the proper files. And I was still like, it's still weird though, because literally the file says Leonard Floyd pencils. And then there's a file that says Leonard Floyd inks.
Right.
Here's a file that says Leonard Floyd colors. And if you really want to break it down, there's even a file that says Leonard Floyd sketch, because for every player I had to submit a sketch, and then the pencils, and then the inks, and then the colors. So I'm like, whoever put this coloring book together at the Bears, I'm like, it literally says pencils. What are you doing? So whatever. I mean, like I said, my pencils are really tight. It's just none of the black area, none of the large black areas are filled in. So
either way, I'm excited. I think that's cool. I never saw those.
You can have freaking 50 of them for all I care.
I'll take it, man. Like that's so cool.
I don't know Bears fans. I live in Panther country, so
are they still around? Okay. I'm a Jets fan, so I can't really talk. You know.
Okay. You got a new coach.
That's true. You did.
Yeah, you got a new coach, and you blew your #1 draft pick. So congratulations,
Sean.
Now Trevor Lawrence can go to Jacksonville.
Yeah, now he's going to Jacksonville. That's for sure.
Look, I tell people you can tell I believe in God or a God, because every Sunday I'm like, please God, don't let them be too Jetsies today. Like, let's not screw this up.
You can't fathom why when they went that far into the season losing. I'm sorry. At that point, as the coach, you tell the owner, if we want to get this #1 pick, who's awesome, we need to tank it.
Yeah.
You tell the players, look, you guys are great. I know you're able to win, but we need to build this team. And if you want to be here next year with a chance of a winning team, we need this guy. Now, of course, the quarterback you have now won't want to hear that.
I'm sure he probably has some kind of issue, though.
Look, the Jets is where you go to end your career, or if you're up and coming, it's where they ruin your career. Like, look at all our quarterbacks.
Yeah, but you know what?
So good.
But here's the thing. Look at the Browns 3 years ago.
Yep.
And now look at the Browns.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know.
You can only stay in purgatory for so long. Eventually, you're going to have a breakout. So just keep the faith, Sean. Yeah. Keep the faith.
Oh yeah. Well, look, I'm a Dallas fan, so
Steelers dropped the ball.
Yeah, Dallas shit the bed so hard. You know, even if Dak didn't break his ankle, who knows?
Wow. Yeah. That was a big. I mean, as soon as that happened, I knew their season was over. Because I mean,
oh yeah.
You lose your superstar quarterback like that, and they had Andy Dalton. Nothing against Andy Dalton, but like he wasn't.
The one game that Andy Dalton didn't play, and they put in that third string guy whose name I'm blanking on. That dude did awesome.
Yeah, I think I didn't watch it. I saw the highlight.
He did awesome in that game, and you're like, start this guy every week. Instead, as soon as Dalton's ready to play again, they bring him back. And I'm like, oh, my God, your season blows. Put this other kid in. See what he can do.
Right? I mean, when your season's going like that, you might as well. I had a question from Elliot I thought was – and I want to get talking about First Man in your campaign here in a second.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We're going for an hour. But Elliot had a question a little bit ago, and he said – is it necessary to go to art school? Are there things you can learn that you can't learn online?
No, I mean, even back in the day when I went, it really comes down to motivation and just your mindset in regards to how well you learn. You know, like Joe Madureira didn't go to art school. He started at Marvel as an intern when he was like 16, 17 and just worked his way up. A lot of guys didn't go to art school. The thing with the Kubert school was Joe told me on my acceptance interview, because you had to interview and show a portfolio and all that stuff. He said in the interview, in 3 years, we'll teach you 10 years worth of stuff. So that's why it's basically 6 hours a day. Each class was 2 hours and 45 minutes long. That I do remember. And you had 2 a day. And I think it was actually 45 minutes for lunch. He's like, so you've got 10 different classes a week, no repeats, 10 different classes a week.
Oh, wow.
he was right. He's like, we will shove 10 years worth of shit down you in 3. And I'm better when I see people do stuff anyhow. I mean, I can, I bought How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way as a kid, still have it. I still collect how-to books, and I devoured them as a kid, but I'm better watching somebody. So when Bart and all the teachers at the Kubert School would put tracing paper over my work and show me how to do stuff,
Nice.
it just, light bulbs just clicked a lot more than looking at a book. But now with YouTube, I don't know if you have to, because you can go to YouTube and see Andy Park, who's one of the lead character designers at Marvel Studios, who started out in comics, 25 years ago as well.
Oh, yeah.
You can see him do digital painting on YouTube. You can take classes online for character design and stuff. I mean, there are online Schoology, and there are just schools online that you can take online art courses and work at your own pace because you'll pay for it, and basically watch the teacher on a pre-recorded class, and then they'll give you a homework assignment. You do it, submit it, and then you'll just get it back with corrections and stuff. And then a lot of the places have one-on-one stuff as well. So it's really not necessary at all. But once again, it depends a lot on the person. So everybody's different, And, the nice thing about art school, too, is when you're going some places, you're around other people,
Right.
You get to see what other people are doing, depending on who you are. For me, it's motivational.
I was just going to say motivation and stuff.
Yeah, it's motivation because you would have contests. In fact, oh my God, I think the biggest standout for my freshman class at the Kubert School, and the guy only went 1 year. He dropped out after the first year, but he was really good. You might not recognize the name, but you'll recognize his job title. His name's Sam Register. If you look at any DC animated cartoon in the past decade or more, Sam is a VP above Bruce Timm.
No shit.
Wow.
Look at any DC cartoon and you'll see Sam Register's VP of creative, blah, 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 whatever.
Nice.
He worked his way up because, and he was in my first year, I'm pretty sure. So in my first year at the Kubert School, there were 5 classes. And what I mean by that is we had 100 students and each class had like 20 kids. And I'm pretty sure Sam was in my class. He sat in the back and he was a tall, lanky kid. And he only went 1 year. So
I'm an art school dropout. I went to the Art Institute of New York, and I was sold on the idea, because New York's 20 minutes away from where I'm from. First class, first day of school. It's like the fundamentals of 2D, where they teach it, whatever. Yeah. The teacher passes out like postcards, and she's like, "This is my art." And she took like romance novels and kind of glued it together in a big box, and it was in like whatever. I took my pen, I'm like, and I threw it in the air and it stuck in the air because I'm like, this is who's teaching me how to draw. I'm like, I'm out of here. Like I learned more from the guys doing graffiti in the streets of uptown and all that. And like the kids in the class were very talented, but I'm like, I don't need this. I'm gonna get a job and then start going to conventions and ask questions and all of that. And that's when YouTube was kind of starting out and slowly but surely where we are now. Unfortunately, maybe a decade or so behind, but you live and learn, you live and learn.
Oh yeah, you live and learn. I almost dropped out my first year, like halfway through. I was on the phone with my parents, like, I can't take this, all this work, blah, blah, blah. I don't like it up here. I think part of it was the weather because it was upstate Jersey and I didn't like the weather. And then a buddy of mine that that was in my class with me, he was ready to drop out as well. And we were both actually looking at the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale because it was right on the beach and blah, blah, blah. So long story short, neither one of us dropped out, but he didn't come back. So I stuck it out for year 2 and 3. And he didn't come back. And he actually did go to the Art Institute in Fort Lauderdale. And, I actually caught up with him probably 7 or 8 years ago at a convention. Haven't seen each other since then. so almost 30 years. And, you know, he doesn't regret it. He wasn't a big comic book guy anyhow, because, I mean, not everybody that went to the Kubert School wanted to do comics. And he does computer animation stuff now, has his own studio in Georgia. I want to say Atlanta, but I'm not sure. And he's, you know, he's doing real well, and, you know, you follow your own path. So,
Yeah.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
I had a question here from Herrenberg. He said, is Andy familiar at all with our cover artist, Jason Wright? He went to Kubert, and is Andy getting the first man stocked into Dewey's, the on-campus Kubert comic shop?
So Jason Wright's name sounds familiar, but unless he went, Sam is the president of Warner Brothers Animation now. I remember that. He got that promotion like a year or two ago. So there you go.
Nice.
So anyhow, the name rings a bell, but honestly, if he didn't go, I'm sure he probably went in the later 90s. You know, because I mean, there are other people I know, like Shane Davis went to the Kubert School, but he went in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think. My buddy Keith Champagne went to the Kubert School, but he actually started the year after I graduated, and other artists I know did. And then, of course, there's artists before me. So, you know, there's so many now.
Elliot had another question. He says, is there a consistent error that you see in artists that you don't like, something you wish artists would stop doing? That's an interesting question.
I really hate it when somebody breaks the 180-degree rule, because while every rule you can break, because it's that old adage, once you know the rules, you can break the rules.
Okay.
And I'll be the first to admit, I break the 100. Does everybody, when I say everybody, I'm talking about you guys, obviously. Do you guys know what the 180-degree rule is?
Switching the scene, the perspective, like let's say from here, I'm talking to you, but like the camera shot's here, but then switching it.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Damn.
Basically, using fist and hand. Here's the example. You can do this, and you can do this, but you can't do this.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the point is, so I hate seeing that, because I have yet to find, and I'm sure I've done it, but if I do it, I try to make it make sense. And if you do it, you can also show movement by, you know, maybe the panel before, if it's the two characters, you show one of them walking. So then the next panel, if you show them on opposite sides, you already established the panel before. One of them's walking to make that movement. Even when somebody says, but, you know, the way the writer wrote it, the dude on the right speaking first, but how can he speak first if he's on the right-hand side of the panel? Because we read left to right. And my answer to that is, well, if you compose the panel correctly, you can do it so they can put that balloon on the top left, and then the dude on the left, his balloon on the bottom right. So you would still read it properly. It's all about how you compose the panel at that point. So that's one big thing. I will say, and this is just a mistake. It's not a mistake I've ever made, but it's in a recent comic. I don't like talking about other artists and stuff, because it's like recent, as in it came out last week. And I'll say it came out last week from DC. So if you want to hunt it down, I'll give everything but the title and the artist. But enough information, you could find it. It came out last week from DC. So obviously it's a Future State book.
I was about to say Future State.
The book, on the very first page of the book, there's a shot of a character from basically here up, as much as you're seeing me, and their hand is in the panel doing this, and they drew the hand backwards. So,
really?
See how my thumb is pointing to you guys?
Yeah.
The thumb is on this side pointing this way.
Really? I'm going to have to...
And I'm looking at it, and I swear to God, as I'm looking at it, because I'm like, there's no way, that can't be right. I'm doing this with my hand, and I'm going, nope, it's impossible. And unless you have your palm down where your knuckles are up, but that's not how the hand's drawn. The hand is drawn palm up. If your palm is up, you can't have your thumb pointing to. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, oh my God, how did that? Like, as an artist, we make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. You know whose job that is to catch that?
Editors.
Editor.
Job. It's the editor's job. And that is the problem with editors these days, is they're not. When I grew up reading comics, and even when I got into comics, it was editors were basically freelancers like myself that have been doing it for as long as I have been now, 30 years. And then when an editorial job opened up, if you were top of mind, the company, and maybe living already close in town, so now it would be either in Burbank or still in New York where Marvel is, they would go, oh, an editor position opened up. What freelancers that have been doing this for a while live in the area? Maybe we want to see if they want to transfer to a desk job. And that's how it was, back in the day. So you'd have an editor that was like Bob Harris, who was worked on all the X books, editor in chief, whatever, and now at DC. Started out in the mailroom at Marvel, but he worked his way up. He didn't start out at, however old he was. I don't know how old he was when he started in the mailroom. Let's say, and this is what I was told, but let's say he was 20. We didn't walk in at 20 and go, hey, you like reading comics, you can be an assistant editor or an editor. No, he started low and worked his way up.
Right. Yeah, I would say, I'm going to have to go to the comic store tomorrow, and I'm going to flip through and see if I can figure out. I want to see that now.
Hey, if anybody watching this finds it, and I'll answer what it is, I just won't say what it is. So if any sleuths out there want to Google search stuff, I'll answer what it is.
Somebody Google quick and see if you can find that. Leandro asks, who are your major influences? Because I know you talked about who took you under your wing and everything, but what were like the big influences?
Growing up, first and foremost, it's Mike Zeck, because he did that issue of Captain America that I bought. And I was big into inking. Like I said, I was teaching myself how to ink with a brush before I even went to the Kubert school. So penciling wise, it was Mike Zeck. It was Alan Davis back then, Neil Adams, Joe Kubert, Gil Kane.
Gil Kane.
Those are the ones coming to mind. Oh, John Byrne, of course, George Perez, Steve Rude. So those are top of mind when I was a kid before I went to the Kubert school. Because I didn't really discover Bart's work until like the year before I went to the Kubert school. And then inking wise, it was John Beatty, Joe Rubenstein, Terry Austin, Joe Sennett. Those were the guys when I was coming up that I really looked at a lot and stuff. Yeah. And then the fun thing was, like I said, so Mike Zeck and John Beatty did that first issue of Cap I bought, and then I subscribed to it. So I bought every issue those guys did. And then, not even a year in, I graduated in 91, started working for DC, moved to Orlando, and then within 3 months or 4 months, I was actually sharing a studio with John Beatty, the guy who did that first. And then a month or two after that, he introduced me to Mike Zeck, because him and Zeck were good friends, and I became friends with Mike Zeck. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's we're going for an hour and 20 minutes. Let's talk about your campaign first, man, that you've got on Indiegogo right now. Let me see if I can bring it up.
Hopefully everybody's looking at the page and backing it, because it's pretty cool, in my opinion.
I hope so. Dude, there were not 12 future state titles last week. I know that for a fact. I was just answering him. There might be 12 out now, but
I was just saying there might be 12 now.
When Future State first came out last week, there was only like 5 or 6.
And I'm going to be honest that Future State has not interested me at all, so I didn't really check any of it out, because I was like, I feel like it's a story that's been done before. You go into the future, you see, the new versions of the same characters and blah blah blah. It just really interests me. And there wasn't really an artist group that really pulled me in either. But I am going to go back though. Next time I'm at the comic book store, I'm going to go back and flip through every single one of those titles. You said it's on the first page, right?
It's the first page. You don't have to flip through every one. Just ask the retailer, can you tell me which ones came out the very first week of Future State?
Okay, so that's the first one. All right.
That'll narrow it down. I bought it. I read it because I like the person's artwork. Oh, somebody actually got it.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me.
That's it. So they got it.
Leandro figured it out. All right.
That's it.
All right. I'm gonna
it's Joelle Jones who draws it. I like her artwork. That's kind of one reason I was a little amazed about that mistake, because it's very, I don't know. I don't really fault her. I fault the editor for not catching it.
Sure.
Because I've seen, you guys know who, I can't remember who drew this cover now. Remember when DC did their Impact line in the 90s? There's a book called Jaguar.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Impact was more of a kids line. They did the Fly, the Comet, stuff like that.
The Shield.
It was a cover.
Not the Shield.
I think it was a cover of Jaguar. It was either a cover or an inside page. The artist drew her with 2 left feet or 2 right feet, something like
really?
that. Yeah, so I mean, people do that crap all the time, but it's the editor's job to catch it. So, anyhow,
2 left feet. That's how I dance.
That's right.
Hold on a second. I'm trying to find it. All right, I'll find it later.
Okay.
I thought I could easily. Sorry, I thought I could easily find that. I'll find that later. It has nothing to do. Yeah, let's play the trailer to your campaign real quick and get immersed in it. Oh, let me unmute it first. Let me start that again.
First, man.
There we go.
You know the drill. A college kid is imbued with great power and likes it. Penumbra has other plans, and hand delivers him to Monarch, a fun 64-page action-packed comic book, harkening back to the glory days of Marvel Comics, only on Indigogo.
You know, how do I dropping the ball? There we go. You know what I love about the art is just, I love the massive muscles, the massive legs on whatever that character. What was that character?
Monarch, the purple guy.
Monarch. Yeah, I just love it. I love it. Like, it's just, to me, that's comic books, and I grew up in, I got into comics heavily in the early 90s, especially with the image boom and everything. And that was just what I loved about comics back then. Just, I mean, there's, the proportions are there. You got to know how to draw anatomy. But I loved how artists could just, exaggerate. Because that's to me what comics was. It was an exaggeration of real life, and that, to me, that kind of stuff I like seeing, because it's just I don't need a hyper realistic looking superhero, because that's not really what I want to see. And that's probably one of the issues I have with a lot of artists today. They're trying to be just too realistic with their art. To me, it's kind of boring, because I see that every day. I don't want to see it. I want to see stuff like this.
Yeah, no, so I totally agree 100%. I grew up in that time too, and in the time of Jack Kirby and, like I said, John Buscema and all those guys. The basic gist was, no, that it's not a suit. It's just, so Luke Henry, the kid next to Apollo, transforms into him like Billy Batson transforms into Shazam, except Shazam is actually wearing a costume. That's just him. So, and then he transforms back. I agree. I think her art is fantastic. It's just that hand thing. But anyhow, no, I agree. I grew up where basically, for expedience sake, because in the 70s, 60s, 70s, even 50s, 40s, whatever, comic book artists weren't paid a lot. It was all about production. So that's why costumes were simpler back then. That's why Captain America's costume in the 80s and in the 70s, up until basically the movies, honestly, looked the way it did, because it's just lines on a body. But once you start giving depth to those lines, like the depth that's on the costume that Chris Evans wears in the movies,
Right.
it takes longer to draw. And it's like, do you want me to draw a page a day, or do you want me to draw it that way? And that's why costumes, like, and I agree with you. I love all the early Image stuff. I love Wildcats. I still collect. The only monthly book I still get is Savage Dragon. Other than that, I pick up hit or miss stuff for the artwork.
Right.
Like I said, I probably get 15 books a month, but it's either character. Like I love Green Lantern, so I get Green Lantern. I like Justice League, I get Justice League. So there's certain things, but once a story arc ends or the artist leaves, I'll leave.
Yeah, me too. Same way.
So anyhow, I got into comics at a time when it was still that way of going, yeah, you're basically just drawing a naked dude without showing his junk, and then you're just drawing lines over the body. Same with women,
Yep.
And now there's this switch. I remember I did a job for DC. I don't know, probably, I'm trying to think where I was living. Oh, it was there. 10 years ago. I drew a job for DC about 10 years ago. And one of the female heroes in the book, I drew her boobages, as I like to say, round, like normal.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the editor was like, oh, can you get rid of like the cleavage and just draw? And she's wearing a skin tight costume, and just draw like that line, like when a girl wears a real tight t-shirt, to where it's just, or even a big guy that has a huge chest, you just see that wrinkle underneath, right? That shows the chest or whatever, breast or whatever. So I said, all right. And it just pissed me off, because I'm flipping through other books. And this is what drives me crazy about certain editors and their little funky tastes, because I'm looking at other comics from DC that have different editors, and oh, look, here's a female superhero, and it's the total round boobs. I mean, Jim Lee still draws chicks like that,
Right, yep.
And that's a double standard I hate. It's like, look, man, I get it. That's not your cup of tea, but unless it's a company-wide edict down from the top, why are you picking on me, man? Give me a break.
Yeah.
That's stupid. And the good part is the whole job was not inked digitally, but it was inked on blue lines for expediency's sake. I just emailed the pencils to the inker, so he printed them out in blue. So all my pencils are still drawn the proper way, because I just did all those fixes in Photoshop before I sent them off. But it's shit like that just drives me crazy.
That's one thing I absolutely hate about some modern art. And you're right, maybe it is from the editors, and that's just the way that they want, or maybe that's the artists that they try to incorporate into the business. But like the whole, I've even seen people like J. Scott Campbell gets attacked for it all the time by the way he draws chicks, because of the way that they bend the body and all this stuff. It's just like I honestly I don't understand it, because again, it's an exaggeration of a form. Comic book. Yeah, it's comic books. Like you're not trying to draw for realistic stuff.
Here's the question I get. I was telling somebody else this. I get this question probably twice a year from all the cons I do. And so twice isn't a lot. So, thank you very much. And the question is, a woman will come up to me and go, why are the women all drawn so perfect? And I go, and here's my answer. I go, why are all the men drawn so perfect? You tell me, because I've had this too. I mean, it's been 30 years. I've had a woman ask me, why are all the women look like they just walked out of Playboy? And I'm like, why do all the men look like they just walked out of Muscle and Fitness?
Yep.
What's your fucking point?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, and then you hear not all women look like that. Do I look like that dude I'm drawing? No. Do any of us artists in this row that are men, mostly men, look like any of the guys we draw?
They're all pretty diabetic.
So it's like I'm drawing the idealized version of a person because I don't want to see Joe Schmo running around in a costume and drawing comic books where when they bend their arm, you see a couple little wrinkles here because, it might be skin tight here and skin tight here, but right here, you're going to see a couple tight little wrinkles. It's like, no, I don't need to see that shit. And now there are artists that do it well, and I don't mind it. But when I see it done badly, I'm just like, ugh.
It's
it's about exaggeration.
It's one thing. It's like, well, why do they all have to look like that? It's because they're fucking superheroes. Because they're supposed to look better than the normal person. So when you see a normal person in a comic book, they're going to stand out completely because that's what they are. They're superpowered beings, or they have some kind of thing that makes them special, and that's why they are perfect. That's why they are good looking. That's why their men are ripped and the women are voluptuous and curvy.
And they're not real.
When I tell you, I tell you an artist I like that does really minimalistic stuff with his heroes, and the thing with minimalistic art is it's actually harder to do than the real detailed drawing everything. Because with minimalistic stuff, you have to know exactly what to leave in and what to take out. But Frank Quietly, I really like Frank Quietly's artwork. I loved All-Star Superman. And if you look at All-Star Superman, take away the color, he's almost just an outline.
I was just going to say, I know
mass, he's got this mass to him. And the thing Frank also did was he gave Clark Kent a different body posture when he was Clark Kent. Yeah. He drew him hunched over with his shoulders rolled forward. And when he drew him as Superman, it was upright with his shoulders back. So anyhow. But this is First Man, which we should be talking about.
I was just going to say, we'll get back up to the top here.
Yeah.
So, fine. You got 14 days left to go with 121 backers. It was a 3,200 fixed goal. You've got 6,100, almost 6,200 raised so far. Tell us a little bit about this project and this campaign.
First Man is a throwback to the type of comics I grew up with. Silver Age type stuff. Silver Age was in the late 60s and 70s, and then Bronze Age was in the 80s. Just classic, fun superhero story. Lots of action in it. The whole story is Luke Henry, who's the college kid, gets imbued with this power. It's an essence that is, there are these 10 essences that are spread throughout the universe, spread throughout the cosmos. Each one is inhabiting a different soul or inhabitant of a different planet. And this one inhabits Luke Henry on Earth. Monarch, the bad guy, his goal, his sole purpose is to collect all 10, because the reason the 10 were spread in the first place is because if they're all just centered in one place, it's just way too much power. So they had to be broken up and shot across the cosmos. And Monarch realizes this and wants to basically collect them all into himself to become more powerful. And this is the last one he has to get. So he basically with the help of Penumbra comes to Earth to track it down. Penumbra, the female, has a certain link to the essence that inhabits Apollo, the First Man. So she kind of is playing both sides a little bit for her own agenda. It's 64 pages. It's square bound, perfect bound. So, not stapled. There's a extra program book that has shots of First Man that are by different artists. A lot, truth be told, a lot of the artists in it, their drawings are also in the Drawing Dynamic Comics book that you guys have. So I emailed them all and said, hey, do you mind if I use this piece of art that you did back then for that book? Because they were only printed in that book. And they were all like, yeah, go ahead. Some of the other pieces are new pieces that I've gotten over the years that are in it. And then the program book is also going to show layouts and pages I just. There's a couple pages where I drew them, I didn't like them, so I did them over. Or a panel or two I might have redone from the stuff as well, and just behind the scenes type stuff, sketches and whatnot. So that's basically what it is. So if you're looking for just a fun superhero book, and I say fun because the dialogue it's lighthearted. It's not Peter Parker, but I'd say if you, on a humor level, that's what I'm trying to go for with the dialogue. And a friend of mine's helping me script it, and he's definitely better at scripting dialogue than I am. But we talk about my bare thoughts, I guess you could say, outline of what I want people saying, and he runs with it better. So that's the scoop.
Sounds good, man. And
He's talking to his dad.
Sometimes it's like, that's all you really want is just a fun, entertaining book. Like, not everything has to be, this dark, gritty. Yeah, we've talked about a lot of the show. Not everything has to be Shakespeare. Sometimes it just wants to be nice visuals, fun story, just a good entertainment for about 15 minutes or however long it takes you to read a book,
Yeah, exactly. And every character is going to have their own bio page, like the old handbook to the Marvel Universe. Apollo's is on the campaign. Then, of course, I've got the fake Hostess pie ad because I love those growing up.
I was going to ask you about this, yeah.
Yep, I love those. And there's a website you can go to that catalogs them all. So if you're really curious to see all the Hostess ads, just Google this comic book ad. Oh yeah, there's a website that literally categorizes them by character too. So you can click on Captain America and see the list of all the Captain America ads, and then click on it and see every one.
Oh shit, that's awesome.
So yep. And I got the Bart Sears variant cover. Of course, I tagged him along to do a variant cover for me.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
And then this shows some of the art from the program book with the guest artists.
I was looking at this earlier. Excuse me. These all look really cool. Just for being the. You got some awesome artists too that are on here.
It's good to have friends.
Yeah, I feel you on that. What I like is Brandon Peterson. I always like Brandon Peterson. I thought he was a very underrated as far as like the names go. Like people talk about. Like I always liked Brandon Peterson.
Yeah.
His style.
Yep. Same here.
Campbell, obviously. George Perez. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool, man. Yeah, it sounds like really fun. But I mean, I'll definitely be back in this campaign. Like I said, there's 14 days left, everybody. So if you've seen something you like on here, please do us all a favor and go back it, because that's what we're here for. And it sounds like an awesome story. Great art.
And share the link too. To
share
social media.
Share it.
I think Herrenberg has dropped in. I think he shared the link quite a bit. So if you guys go through the comments, I know Herrenberg has dropped it. I think maybe Leandro's put it in there too. So the link's definitely in there. The link should be in the comments of the video, unless I dropped the ball, which I might have dropped the ball. Now I'm thinking about it.
I think you did.
I should be
And
fired.
I copy pasted from you, so I did as well. But I'm going to blame you, Joe.
Yeah, I will put the link in there so that anybody sees this tomorrow, whatever, going forward, you'll have the link. But I know the link's in the chat. It's been put in there a bunch of times. So Skybound, who did this? Oh,
What's that?
I said, who did this cover? I
did.
Can't make it.
Is
that your signature?
Yeah. I've got a couple. So I decided I'd add some. So the thing with the whole pandemic is, I usually take sketch covers I do at home to shows to sell. So I already have some pre-done stuff.
Oh, okay.
And with this stupid pandemic, I have so many sketch covers built up here that I was like, I should put some up. So I mean, I'm not kidding. I've got like 15 of them. So I'm just going through, use my own judgment of which ones to put up. So, I figured I'd throw a few sketch covers up that are already done, and of course you get that comic and then the book as well. So
nice. That's awesome. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. I was looking at this originally and I couldn't understand what. Yeah. Okay, I get it. Yeah. I'm catching on.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
How long did it take you to do this Justice League one?
That's a very good question because I picked at it. I'd say all told, if I just did it start to finish, it'd probably take I don't know, day and a half, maybe just a really long day. I don't have the focus for that anymore. So I worked on it over the course of like a week. I would just, draw a couple characters, come back to it, draw a couple more, come back to it. So
I
but
couldn't do that.
it's funny because with the Justice League one, I got the blank. I love buying blank covers at the shop. They don't cost any more than a regular book. And I'm just like, with this Justice League one, I just want to try and fill it up as much as I can.
Right. Now, you did a great job.
I've never done that. I usually do one or two characters and that's it. But for the Justice League, I was like, fuck it. Let's just kind of like I said, I thought, you know what? I'll just pick at it every day for like 20 minutes to a half hour a day. And then it won't feel so daunting. Because if that was just like, I'm going to do this and, sit down, start to finish, forget it. So.
I love the character design on. Yeah. How do you pronounce the name again?
Penumbra.
Yeah, I love the character design.
It's the darkest part of a shadow. I think that's the definition of it.
Okay.
We'll spread that rumor.
I made her up when I was a kid, and I made First Man up when I was Apollo, I should say, up when I was a kid. Monarch I made up when I was putting the whole story together. So
I think there's a picture in here of
there is. You don't need to show that, but you can.
Yep, I'm sorry. Wait, am I not too? Oh, okay.
No, you can. I don't care.
Okay. Let's go back.
That's the kid drawing of First Man.
Oh, that's very cool.
Your one next to him.
Yep.
So.
See, that's what's great. It's like you're taking these ideas that you had from a child, like Joe, I have, and you build them to new. You give them new life. You give them a fresh coat of paint. Your love that you have right now. That's the best characters in my opinion. Not some mandate where it's like we gotta put this character out because people identify as a tree. It's like, let's to each their own. To each their own.
Exactly.
No, that sounds really awesome. Everybody go back that when you get a chance. I'm gonna definitely do that as soon as I can because that sounds.
Thank you.
Like something I want to read. But I back most of the stuff we have guests on anyway because honestly the show is about supporting independent artists no matter what level you've been on and the years of experience because it's the love of what we do and especially nowadays with the whole crowdfunding thing is such a huge thing right now and that's honestly you're gonna get better books most of the time on some of these crowdfunded books than you are from the big two because there's so much stuff going on in the world of mainstream comics that you want to just boil it down. You want to strip out the editors, like, you got to draw this way or blah, blah, blah. And you just get the passion. You get the passion projects and you get books the way that we want to see them and we want to read them. And I will always support that as long as I have the money in my pocket. I will support people that come on here and get their books because that's exactly what I want to do. And it looks fun. And that's what I miss about. That's the biggest thing I miss about comics these days is the fun aspect. And there's only a few guys that actually doing books that really give me that childhood feeling again of reading books and seeing the art, and that's what I love. I miss it.
Yep. Same here. Yes, she is.
Hard facts. Hard facts.
Yep. I 100% agree. It's I still I have on my spin rack, I've got Byrne stuff on my spin rack, Kubert stuff, Alan Davis, Olivier Copeil, because I love his work. Adam Hughes, Neil Adams, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee. I've got all that stuff. I love that stuff.
It's the best. It's inspiring.
That's
a great way to put it.
It's fun too. That's the thing. It's like. And I'm not saying, look, I love Watchmen. I've got the black and white version of Watchmen they put out a couple years ago because I love Dave Gibbons' artwork. And I really like the story. And I'm not saying Watchmen isn't fun, but, when I would talk to people, other artists and stuff, and back in the early Image days, and Rob would take a ton of heat. Oh, he doesn't draw that well and all that. I'm like, yeah, but you're not looking at it. And I don't know, like, I think this is like my superpower is I can look at stuff objectively from the standpoint of I knew nothing. Like, I can look at comics with a fresh eye, like if I was showing it to my wife or somebody
Right.
that's not an artist that doesn't know all the crap we know, right? But then I can also turn on my artist side and, of course, pick things apart. I mean, the objective part of me, I wish I could look at my stuff objectively, because that I can't do. That, all I do is sit down and go, oh, I can do this better, I can do this, whatever.
Right.
But with guys, with any other artist, I got Youngblood #1 next to my desk. I look at it, I'm like, this is just fun. It's just fun. Now, if somebody was like, well, now turn your artist brain on and look at it, critique stuff, of course, I can go through and I can do that to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's perfect.
Right.
So and my point with like Youngblood and stuff like that, and even Wildcats and Spawn and all that is, last time I checked, when those books were coming out, if you looked at most of the people buying them, they were teenagers and young teenagers, 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid doesn't know shit. They just know what they like to see and what's fun. And if they're the ones shouting out for it, okay.
Yeah, at some point comics became like too technical, or had to be like this, I don't know, this just other thing than what it was. Because when I grew up in the 90s, like I was 12 years old. No, I was 10 years old when Image started. And I think I was about 12 years old when I really started to grasp comic books,
Right.
Really got into everything. And that's all it was. It was an escape from reality. And I loved art because I loved cartoons, so I loved drawing. So when you just immerse yourself in the pages and you just saw this world that came alive, and the artists at the time that were able to give that to you, that is still the biggest thing I love about comics. And today, it doesn't have to be what it's become. So like I'll still buy. I've got all the Image books. I've got so many different copies of the original Image books, because anytime I see them in a 50-cent bin or a 75-cent, I still buy them, even though I got like tons of I'm like, yeah, I'll take it, because mine are all worn out. So I always need new copies.
Well, it's I follow artists, and I still go to the shop every week, and I still walk out with 2 or 3 books, but I try to look at everything that comes out, and a lot of stuff I see, I just look at, from the big two, and I just look at it and I go, if this is like looking at how to draw comics the Marvel way, but it's looking at the what you don't do part.
Right.
And that's what I see some stuff coming out, And once again, I don't fault any artist, because look, if you got a job, more power to you. Somebody hired you and is paying you to do what you want to do and what you love to do. But from an editorial standpoint, I think you're being done a disservice if they're not trying to help you out. And part of it is, I don't know if younger editors have the experience to be able to help them out when it comes to storytelling and dynamics and things like that. So they might be looking at, like I say, you look at the How to Draw Comics to Marvel, and you look at that Avengers page John drew where everything is pretty static, and then he does it again and he's like, and it should be like this, and there's diagonals and all that. And I see books that are coming out that are the don't do it this way page. And I'm like, oh my God, John Buscema would be like, okay, that's the before. You need to be doing the after. That it's like in that book as well as, and in my book too, with the line of action, throwing a punch. A boxer really does probably only lean over like this much throwing a punch. But in a comic, you should be leaning over like that, throwing that punch, really jacking into it.
Right.
And, you just look at some stuff these days that comes out from Marvel or DC, and I'm just like, what the hell? And once again,
Boring.
it's not the artist's fault because they got a job and that's their goal is to get a job. It's the
Right.
editor's fault for not explaining to them, let's try this or let's try this,
It's weird because I feel like the 90s specifically have a really bad rap because a lot of people like to diss the 90s and say like there's a lot of bad art. And I look at it completely different because it's subjective to me because it's art for one, and we talked about like the fun aspect of it, so it doesn't have to be technically perfect if it's dynamic or if it's a lot of energy in a page, And so I look at the 90s and the 80s and stuff like that when art was just kind of booming. There was a lot of experimenting going on. A lot of artists just kind of really being like, I want to do this. It looks cool, so I'm going to do it. And to me, that is way better because it is so energy filled and it brings so much dynamic to the viewer's eyes than maybe if you come to nowadays and like you were talking about, there might be an artist, no fault of their own, and you just have a really weak looking punch by like Superman to a bad guy. And the way they pose Superman, it looks like there's no power, even though that the guy that he's hitting is flying across the page. It's just like dynamically, the stuff in the 90s that you consider bad art because it's like too 90s or too whatever, too exaggerated, is way more entertaining and cool to look at than anything you're seeing right now. And I wish that somebody, like you said, maybe it's editors, but I wish they would go back to that thought process of making comics fun and dynamic and energy. That's why I admire Brett Booth so much because he's still one of the guys doing it today with a big name that's still putting a lot of dynamics into his art.
Yeah. Yeah, Brett. I like Brett's stuff. I own a page of art from oh my God, what was the character he did for Wildstorm?
Backlash?
Yeah, Backlash. It was a one shot. Was there another character named Taboo?
Yeah, that was the name.
Yep.
Yeah, they did a one shot, Backlash Taboo one shot, and I got a page of original art from it. I actually have a drawing of First Man by Brett.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love Brett's stuff. It's just cool superhero stuff. So, yeah, no, I totally hear you. I hear you.
Why don't you run to Marvel? Gosh darn it.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, everybody, we're creeping up on the 2-hour mark. And Andy, we would definitely love to have you back when your schedule opens up. Talk some more art. Just talk is fun conversations. I enjoy talking about all this, So I think if you want to come back, we'd love to have you back again in the future. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the chat. Please go check out the campaign of First Man. I'm going to bring it back up one more time. And go buy this book. Pledge. It's got a lot of cool perks, a lot of different things you can get with this book in general, and just help this campaign out. He's already met his goal, but let's get as much money and just fun stuff out because supporting creators, we all support each other, and I think it's definitely something we need to do. So definitely do it if you like this broadcast and you like the art, which I absolutely do. Rick says, "Great show, Andy."
Thank you.
I'll say that. Yeah, this was a fun. This is why Sean and I got into doing shows like this because we love talking about this. This is this stuff, I guess, the art and stuff. This is the stuff, and it's fun. I could talk about this stuff all day and not get bored. I really could. I'm a complete geek for this kind of conversation. Thanks, Elliot. Thanks, Rick.
And for young artists, get this. Search this out.
Yeah, there you go.
Believe me, you need this in your life.
Now too, you can get it for like $5 now.
Or go to a library and maybe I'll return it.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm horrible.
I'm not ashamed to say I have George Bridgman's complete guide to anatomy, the real thick one that I checked out probably when I was 12.
Oh, so you have a fine, huh? Built up. Nice.
Yeah, the library's not there anymore, so but
very good. Very
good.
And just for anybody that was interested in what Andy was talking about earlier, there it is. Sean found it.
Oh yeah, there's the first page. Look at that backwards hand.
How'd that work out?
That's
Like the
palm up.
reverse.
You can't tell me that's palm down.
I was just say if they tried to draw a palm down, they just did not draw it correctly.
No.
The joints are everything.
You know, everybody makes mistakes. I've made them too. I'm
Sure.
not.
Oh yeah, trust me.
That's the editor's job to, when that page came in black and white, to go, whoop, something's wrong, and then just drop an email and say, hey, Joel, I need you to. So.
Yeah, hopefully we can all get back to going to cons here soon and
Yeah.
back to it because I miss it. I haven't personally been to a con in a long, long time, so it'd be nice. But all right, everybody, before we get out of here, Andy, why don't you let us know where we can find your art, where we can find you on social media?
Oh, AndySmithArt.com, and then at AndySmithArt on everything, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So
Pretty simple. I like it.
Oh,
mhm.
To the point. Sean, where can we find your work?
Same thing, but not Andy Smith. Sean Ahrendt across the board. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Also, Geeks at the Beach is the convention I ran down here for 1 year because COVID happened. Facebook page, like it, share it, all that. And Joe, where can we find you?
Yeah, all the social medias under Joe M. Sonntag or Joe Sonntag. Just type in any version of that name. You're going to find something. If it's a porn site, I'm sorry. It's something I did in my younger days. Just,
Shit happens. You got to pay the bills, man.
Yeah.
Insulin ain't cheap.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. YouTube, Joe M. Sonntag, our YouTube channel. I got a book coming out. I'm trying to push for this July. I'm working my butt off. We'll see if I can get it done, but it's called Reaper Destroyer, so look out for that. I know Sean's got his book, Type 1. We're both trying to launch this year, so be on the lookout for that. But until then, next Friday, Sean, who do we have coming up?
Actually, on Wednesday, we have Mark Polton and
Wednesday.
Clint Hanowski. I butcher his name, Clint. I apologize. They'll be on promoting Sea Dog and Codename Kill Switch Volume 2, which just launched tonight. So get on that bandwagon as well. And then Friday night, we're going to have people call him the coach, but I know him as Papa John Malin. So we'll have John Malin. I just got to check in with him because.
Yeah, you never know. That's always
you never know, John. So we should have John on Friday.
We'll see. But until then, everybody have a great weekend. Thank you so much for joining us again. And everyone on Facebook that we're trying to reconnect with, thank you for joining us. Go to that YouTube channel. The link is in there. Out and Stuff channel. Subscribe. Hit the like. Hit the bell so you can get all our notifications. Help us out. We really appreciate that. And until then, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a blast.
No problem. Thank you.
And we will see you all next Friday. So
See
y'all
ya.
have a good one. Peace.